This is Boomer Life on CIL 650.
And we're back. This is Boomer Life on CIL 650. Joining us in the studio today from the BC Seniors Living Association, our Executive Director, Marlene Williams, along with Carol Holmes, the President from the BCSLA and the CEO of Insight Housing, Hospitality and Health Services. And we have Tony Baina with us today, Vice President of BC Seniors Living Association. So in the first segment of the program, we were talking about some of the basics behind the organization and what you do. And we also talked about a paper that you recently presented to the government to ensure that they're speaking the same language that you are at the BC Seniors Living Association and why that's important. So tell us a little bit more about that paper you presented, and is this something unique to British Columbia?
Sure. One of the reasons for preparing the paper was really to alert the government, as I said before, to our industry and what it is that we offer. One of the things that is very confusing for the general public is the fact that the legislation in British Columbia is unique to British Columbia, and the definitions are unique to British Columbia. So in the neighboring province of Alberta, for example, they provide housing options, and then you can add care ad infinitum as you need it. Whereas in British Columbia, we're more prescriptive. The government has taken an approach up to now that couples care and it has a very tight definition of how much care can be provided by different providers around the province. So if you're independent living, and defined as independent living, you really can't provide any of the personal care that Carol spoke about previously. In assisted living, you can only provide up to 2 what they call prescribed services. As soon as you hit the 3rd prescribed service, your loved one has to move to another property. And so, to give you an example, a personal example, when I moved my mother from Montreal to British Columbia, to Vancouver, when it became obvious that she needed some assistance. She started off in independent living, and she lived in a condo-style apartment with no services. She was still very independent. It became obvious after a period of time that she really needed some assistance with her daily
bathing
activities.
or
well, in her case,
personal?
it was medication reminders in particular. But she was still fully ambulatory, and so we arranged for assisted living. But it was a very short period of time. And in order to get to the assisted living, I actually had to move her from one building to another building in order to get those services. And then within 4 short months, all of a sudden her needs increased to the point where I had to move her again to a residential care or long-term care property. So within the space of less than 6 months, my mother moved 3 times.
3 times.
Very confusing for her, especially given that she lived in her house in Montreal for over 40 years. And all of a sudden, 3 forced moves, 3 very different rooms that she was in, and 3 very different environments that she was in.
So probably extremely distressing, which would not have helped her health conditions at the time.
Exactly. If she had been in Alberta, as an example, she would have been able to probably stay in the same property or the same suite that she was in and continue to receive the services she receives now.
So what is it actually that you're lobbying the government for? To change the definitions, or?
Well, the Seniors Advocate has also kind of recognized what's going on out there and has said that operators should be able to provide more than the 2 prescribed services. That really, if it's within their ability to provide that service and they're able to show that ability to provide that service, that there should be other personal care choices given to the individual so that that move doesn't have to happen as often. So going part of the way to where Alberta is today.
Yeah, I'll just give you a small example, and then I think Carol will go a little bit more in depth in it. For an example, one of the prescribed services that fall within the assisted living registrar's mandate is therapeutic diets. So you could have a healthy, active senior that's living in an assisted living community that maybe just needs help with bailing and medication reminder, but now she needs the therapeutic diet for whatever reason.
Could be diabetic or could be whatever.
Exactly.
Right?
The framework of the assisted living prescribed services, she now has to move to long-term care, which would not be a good environment for her because she's healthy and she's active.
Right.
But she now just needs that 3rd service, or she may just need 6 months of physiotherapy. Again, that's another prescribed services. So it's very regulated in a sense.
Yeah, I think that is for sure the problem. Also, the prescribed services, an operator has to identify which two prescribed services will be delivered within that housing environment, and the prescribed service is attached to the building, not to the senior. So usually what happens is the two prescribed services that an operator will choose to provide is the activities of daily living and medication support, reminders, administration, etc. So if you need the therapeutic diet, or you need the physiotherapy, or you need assistance managing your money, or any of those other prescribed services, you can't get them in that building. So then you're off to complex care prematurely. And I think that's what the advocate was talking about in her report, is that 15% of seniors are currently in residential care prematurely. And if we were more flexible in the housing environment, we would be able to manage them there.
So they're housed incorrectly. They're just in the wrong place. But this must be an extremely difficult legislation to put on paper, because there's no one size fits all. Each individual would be an individual. It's almost like writing a prescription.
Yes. Yes. And the other piece that's very prevalent here is in order to be eligible to live in assisted living, by definition, you must be able to direct your own care or make decisions on your own behalf, respond appropriately in an emergency. So that precludes a lot of people with mild to moderate dementia from being in a housing environment. Well, we all know the prevalence of dementia amongst our seniors population. So we're automatically, excluding a fair number of people in the seniors population, and so they are also going into complex care prematurely. Somebody with dementia needs support with wayfinding. They need support in terms of their thought process and orientation to person, place, and time. They don't need professional nursing care in a long-term care facility in all cases. They generally need assistance with medication and some assistance with activities of daily living. If we were to relax the rules in assisted living, whereby we could build buildings where we could maintain people safely in housing, then people with dementia could be there. So that's certainly something that we've had dialogue with government about, and I believe that is getting some airtime. I think it will probably happen through legislative change in the future in this province, and it's the right way to go. As Tony and I have alluded, in Alberta, people with dementia can live in a housing environment, and the regulation supports that. It's more flexible. It's more built around the needs of the senior, as opposed to worrying about bad press stories.
Right. So you presented all this information to the government. What kind of a response did you get so far? Have you?
I think we've had a really good response from government. They have invited us to the table to some of their planning sessions. They ask good questions. They've wanted to come out and get into some of our communities and learn a little bit more about what it is that we provide. And they've asked us to engage with the funded side of the industry, which is the health authorities, etc., so that we can actually educate health authorities on what else is out there. Not every solution for a senior needs to be supported and paid for by the government. There's lots of people out there that are fully prepared and able to pay for themselves, but they don't know that the services exist. And so if we can work together with health authorities so that, maybe they don't have the right solution for the senior, but they know that the private sector does have that solution, and if they can make that referral, then aren't we serving everybody?
I think one of the things that Carol's hit on is we spend a lot of time being reactive to today's needs. But what about when we age and we want to move in? Is that the environment I would want to move into when my care needs are there? The answer for me anyway is no. I want to be able to make a real estate decision. I'd like to live in maybe a 2-bedroom condo and have services brought to me. Under today's environment, I would be in a 1-bedroom or even a bachelor suite, not of my choosing, while the government provides through a third-party operator the care for me. Why, as a baby boomer, I'm used to making real estate decisions. I want to live where I want to live. I want to live with a certain, certain amenities and certain other things.
And a level of independence.
And a level of independence. So beginning this conversation with government today is important, because it's not only for today's seniors, but also for us aging baby boomers who are going to be there soon enough. And so I think that we're getting an audience with the government, because I think they see that long-term value too, and that long-term payback in terms of what we're proposing.
And I think one of the things that I know my mother had a problem with when we were moving her into a retirement community many, many years ago was that she really, truly believed that we were putting her someplace and we were throwing away the key and she was going to lose all her independence. So I think it's really important for not only the senior but the families to understand that they're going to retain their full independence. They're going to make all their own decisions. They're going to make all their own choice. But what they're really going to be doing is starting to enjoy life again through social activities and through meal functions and through all sorts of amenities that are available for them in that particular building. And I think one of the harder decisions that I hear all the time by families is that they're really concerned that exactly what happened to Tony. They don't want, once they move their loved one, they don't want them to move again.
They don't want to move.
And so they're phoning to say, where can I put them that we can do that? And unless we get some kind of flexibility in the way assisted living is provided, currently that's not happening. And so I think that's why a lot of seniors are staying, or families are choosing to keep their mom and dad at home, or their mom or whatever, because they don't want them to do exactly what happened to Tony. I don't want to move her 4 times to confuse her, to disorient her. And it is an issue because they're sacrificing the safety and security of their loved one because they don't want them to have to go through that particular, and by us trying to help change this legislation to be more flexible, it's going to give families more peace of mind.
But aren't there properties currently in British Columbia that offer all levels of assisted living, residential care, all under the same roof? That if
different buildings. So for an example, they'd still have to move to 3 different buildings.
Or three different neighborhoods within the same building.
Within the same building. It's still a move.
It's still a move. And one of the more interesting aspects of that is where you do have something like that. If you have a couple and one of the partners in the marriage is ages or requires care sooner than the other, they can actually be separated because one part of the building is independent living, so the spouse that is independent can still live there. Then all of a sudden the one that requires residential care or long-term care has to move to another side of the building. While physically they're still in the same building, they're in different neighborhoods.
Yeah.
That's a little odd, especially given the longevity of some of the relationships that are out there with our mums and dads. And very confusing for them because they've lived under the same roof, probably slept in the same bed for a long time. Now all of a sudden to be separate but in the same building, very confusing.
I know as baby boomers, we're having this conversation for ourselves, looking out for us, but also for our aging parents. Do you think our kids are going to look after us the same way we're looking after our parents?
No.
No. You're listening.
I'll plead the fifth.
Okay. You're listening to Boomer Life on CL 650, and joining us in the studio today from the BC Seniors Living Association, our Executive Director, Marlene Williams, along with Carol Holmes, President, BCSLA, and Vice President from the BCSLA, Tony Baina. If you want more information, please visit the website, bcsla.ca. We'll be right back.
Celebrating the baby boomer lifestyle. This is Boomer Life on CL 650.